This concept of balancing of public and private property rights is manifested in a hadith that we mentioned in an earlier episode, where there was a man who owned a date palm tree in the orchard of another person. And when it began to become inconvenient for the owner of the orchard and his family to have this outsider coming and going in their orchard, which was a private place and surrounded by a wall, the owner of the orchard offered to the owner of the tree that, let me buy that tree from you. And he refused. So the case went to the Prophet ﷺ, and he again repeated that, sell your tree to the orchard owner. He refused. Then he suggested transplanting it somewhere else. Again, he refused. Then he said, look, make a gift of it to this owner, and Allah will give you far better than it in paradise. And he still refused. So the Prophet ﷺ ordered the orchard owner, uproot the tree and just toss it outside of your orchard. And he told the owner of the single tree, Anta mudar, you are an inflictor of harm. So here you have one person's property right, and you have another person's property right. And because this person was being unreasonable in insisting upon his rights in a way that harmed others, then the Prophet ﷺ, he reached that point where he just said, the Sharia's recognition of your property rights is withdrawn in this case because you're being obstinate and causing harm. A similar case is manifested in the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab. There's a man who wanted to run an irrigation ditch to get to his orchard, but it had to pass through the property of another man. So he requested his neighbor to allow him to dig a ditch that would allow the water to pass through it. And the owner of this piece of land refused. So the first man appealed to Umar that intercede. Okay, we've come to a break. We'll pick it up after, inshallah.
Dialogue. Discussion. Debate. Rebuttal. Conclusion.
Eliminate misconceptions about religion. Get enlightened.
Witness Dr. Zakir Naik in a battle of words in Crossfire, next on Peace TV. The value of money in the hereafter will be measured by its proper use in the present.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا أنفقوا مما رزقناكم من قبل أن يأتي يوم لا بيع فيه ولا خلة ولا شفاعة.
According to the glorious Quran, one of the best ways to use your money is to spend it in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by spreading His message of Islam. Peace TV is a non-profit Islamic satellite television channel that is primarily dedicated for just that cause, the proper presentation of Islam. It's a great choice to invest in it and a golden opportunity to purify your wealth in a way that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Support Peace TV. Send your zakat and donations to IRFI Al Ryan Bank, 47 Calthorpe Road, Birmingham, UK, B151TH. Pound account number 011-32301. IBAN GB49ARAY 30008301 132301. Sort code 300083. Swift BIC code ARAY GB22. Please confirm your contribution at support@peacetv.tv.
Support Peace TV, the solution for humanity.
steeped in darkness.
The best generation, the generation of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions.
There rose an Ummi nation to teach the world.
They gave their lives to the cause of Islam. They had their full devotion and loyalty to Allah and to the Prophet ﷺ.
The four,
The legends,
the fearless,
hurricanes,
the flag bearers,
tornado,
the friends.
caliphs of the Prophet.
Watch Companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, every Thursday at 6 p.m. UK and 7 p.m. Europe on Peace TV.
Explore the wisdom and balance of Islamic law. And the genius of Muslim jurists who distilled the essence of the law into short statements of potent meaning. So join me, Riaz Ansari, for a survey of Islamic legal maxims.
Appreciate the accountability of Islamic laws against all manner of corrupt practices in Islamic Legal Maxims with Riaz Ansari every Sunday at 5:30 p.m. UK and 6:30 p.m. Europe on Peace TV. Marriage or divorce?
What's Islamic ruling?
Husband wants to give divorce.
Solution or problem?
Joint family system.
Heaven or hell?
Big fat events have become the norm.
You choose. Beauty, wealth, family status, virtue. Decide what you want. Decide your choice. Be sad or be happy. It's your choice. Join Dr. Zakir Naik in Better Half or Bitter Half every Friday at 7 p.m. UK and 8 p.m. Europe on Peace TV.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله ذو الجلال
Assalamu alaikum, welcome back. So, the owner of the one piece of land, he goes to Omar and he explains the situation to him, that he's requested his neighbor to allow him to dig a ditch that will allow the water to pass through and irrigate the first man's land. And the second man refused. So Omar reasoned with him. He said, you know, this water that's passing through your land will also be of benefit to you. You can use it, and it will be of benefit and no harm to you. And the owner of this intervening piece of land insisted that no, I will not allow it. And eventually Omar, he said, Wallahi, la yamurranna bihi walau ala batnik. By Allah, He will pass it through your land, even if it's over your belly. So he withdrew the recognition of this particular property right of the second owner because he was being obstinate and causing harm in a situation where he didn't need to. So these examples, they demonstrate that property rights are not absolute in Islam, and that they're subject to the deserving needs of others, providing that there's no harm to the owner. So property rights are not supposed to be exercised selfishly. Now, one of the key words in the maxim is at-tasarruf. And we mentioned this earlier, that it means free disposal. And so there are basically two kinds of tasarruf. Tasarruf, like I said before, there is not a really good English one-word translation for it. Disposal is about as close as you can get. It also means actions in general. So tasarruf is of two types. Qawli, which means to make a statement, and fi'li, which means to actually commit an act affecting the physical world. So an example of tasarruf qawli is to say, I'm offering this piece of land for sale. So that's tasarruf, verbal tasarruf. It's an offer. And if somebody else says, I accept, then that's also verbal tasarruf. Tasarruf fi'li, and physical disposal, the minimum form of that would be to take possession. Now, if a person takes possession of another's property with his permission, then that's perfectly lawful For instance, he could lend something to another person, lend his car, lend his horse, whatever, lend his computer. And if a person takes possession of another's property without permission, then that basically is called ghasb, usurpation. So usurpation is different from theft. Theft is done surreptitiously, secretively. Ghasb is done just openly. And interestingly, there's not a had penalty for ghasb. So for instance, squatting in another person's property. Sometimes you have somebody owns a piece of property and for one reason or another they're not using it and it's maybe not in very good condition and there's a lock on the door and somebody else breaks in and starts living there. So that's an example of ghasb. So the minimum level of disposal, physical disposal, is taking possession of another's property. Beyond that, it could also involve making physical changes to it. So this squatter who's broken into that house, knocked the lock off the door, and taken up residence in it, he paints the house, used to be white, he paints it pink. Okay? This is a change that he's made to that physical property. So if you're a usurper and you make changes to another's property, then you are damin, you're liable for the expenses, the damage caused by that act. If we look at the authority for this basic principle that no one is allowed to make use of another's property without their permission, to dispose of another's property without permission of the owner or the Sharia, there's various texts that support that. One of the most prominent in Surah An-Nisa, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تأكلوا أموالكم بينكم بالباطل إلا أن تكون تجارة عن تراض منكم. O you who believe, do not consume one another's wealth wrongfully. Rather, let there be trade by mutual consent. So, mutual consent is an essential condition for making transactions and disposal of others' property lawful. It's not sufficient by itself, but it is essential. In another verse that's kind of similar, وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ وَتُدْلُوا بِهَا إِلَى الْحُكَّامِ لِتَأْكُلُوا فَرِيقًا مِنْ أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ بِالْإِثْمِ وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. In Surah Al-Baqarah, do not usurp one another's property by unjust means, nor offer it to the judges so that you may devour knowingly and unjustly a portion of the goods of others. In the farewell pilgrimage, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, أَلَا لَا تَظْلِمُوا أَلَا لَا تَظْلِمُوا أَلَا لَا تَظْلِمُوا. Listen, do not wrong one another. Listen, do not wrong one another. Listen, do not wrong one another. إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِلُّ مَا لِمْرِيٍ إِلَّا بِطِيبِ نَفْسٍ مِّنْهُ. No one's property is lawful to another except with his freely given consent. And note that in this wording, it doesn't say ma lumriyan Muslim, the wealth of a Muslim is not lawful for another Muslim. It said nobody's property is lawful to another. And then that issue of the sanctity of the property of non-Muslims living among Muslims peacefully was explicitly underlined in the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, أَلَا مَنْ ظَلَمَ مُعَاهِدًا أَوْ انْتَقَصَهُ أَوْ كَلَّفَهُ فَوْقَ طَاقَتِهِ أَوْ أَخَذَ مِنْهُ شَيْئًا بِغَيْرِ طِيبِ نَفْسٍ فَأَنَا حَجِيجُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Listen, if anyone oppresses a non-Muslim living peacefully among Muslims, or deprives him, or requires of him something beyond his capacity, or takes anything from him without his freely given consent, I will argue against him on the Day of Judgment. Another hadith that very subtly indicates this principle, a statement I'll just mention in English. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, no man should lead another in prayer where the latter has authority, nor should he sit in his place of honor in his house without his permission. So in light of all the Sharia evidence, Imam al-Shafi, he said, الناس مسلطون على أموالهم ليس لأحد أن يأخذها ولا شيئا منها بغير طيب أنفسهم إلا في المواضع التي تلزمهم. People have been given authority over their properties. No one has the right to take any of them without their freely given consent, except in areas where there's a binding obligation upon them. So let's look at some of the implications or the applications of this principle. If you're renting a house from somebody, then you don't have the right to start making changes, physical changes to the house, without the owner's approval, because that's his property, not yours. All you have through your rental contract, the only right you have is the use of that property as is. Let's say that one person loans a car to another, and he says, okay, drive it wherever you want within a radius of 50 miles. Then you can't take it outside of that area. Or he said, I'm loaning it to you and only you should drive it. So you can't let your friend drive it because you have violated the terms of his permission. He didn't authorize you to do that. One of the things that in the banking system, which includes Islamic banks, there's accounts which are technically called wadi'a, which is a deposit for safekeeping, although this is not wadi'a yad aman. This is not a trustee-based acceptance of another's property. It's wadi'a yad damana. The person accepting that money, or the party accepting that money from the depositor, is actually taking it as a loan, and therefore that gives them the right to use it, but they have the obligation to return it to the depositor whenever they ask. So because it's on that basis, then the bank would have the right to use those funds. However, if somebody puts their funds in a safety deposit box, then the bank would have no right to go into that box and pull out those funds and start using them, because the nature of the contract is different. So that permission has not been given to them. And because it's a trust-based contract with regard to the safety deposit box, if for some reason, let's say there was a fire, something beyond human control, the bank was not negligent or transgressing, then if there was a loss to that property in the safety deposit box, the bank would not be liable for it. We've come to the end of our time. Thank you for listening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wallahu a'lam.
إلهي أنت ربي ذو الجلال علمت بما نويت بلا جدال إلهي قد أتيتك فاعف عني وهذا ذل يغني عن سؤال.
Line answer is sufficient. God himself paid the price. And Jesus